This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by costume designer Jaclyn Banner, whose work includes Creepshow, Kingdom Business, and more recently, Hulu's Kindred, just to name a few. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I guess my first question, how did you get involved with Kindred on Hulu?
So it came through as an opportunity from my agency, which is DDA, and I interviewed, and obviously they loved what I wanted to say, what I had to say, and my ideas and thoughts, and so that is how I got the opportunity to design Kindred.
So once you get that type of project, like how did you get started? Like, did you start researching into things? Did you read the book, or how did you approach the project?
Yes, lots of research. Of course, I was definitely familiar with Octavia Butler and had read a couple of her books, but I had not read Kindred. And so, of course, when I got the confirmation that I would be on board, I read the book. I read it a few times because one of the things that Brandon Jacob Jenkins, our creator and showrunner, wanted to do was to make sure, even though he was adapting it a little bit different from the novel, but we wanted to keep as many of the costume elements from the book, into the series. And so read the book, one time just to really get a good understanding of it, read it probably 2 or 3 more times to kind of pinpoint the costume elements that we wanted to keep and things that we may have wanted to change. And then lots of research, for this time period, because in the novel, the modern day is like 1979, whereas in the series, modern day is 2016. So that was one of the things too that Brandon wanted to do, was to update the book to make it a little bit more relatable, for our time period. So even though you watch it, it may seem like it's like current 2022, but it's actually 2016. But the period piece, the period time was still the same as in the book, which is early 19th century, which is early 1800s. So for season 1, we did 1810 to 1820. And so, during that time in our country, a lot of our, ideals and morals and definitely fashion and style came from Europe. So as opposed to, it being a situation or a show that's designed like Bridgerton, which has fabulous costumes, the difference is that Bridgerton is set in another country. It's an upper class society. So there's lots more, more expensive looks and fantastical and whimsical things. Whereas Kindred, the period piece is based in Maryland, in our country, on a rural plantation. So of course, there's going to be vast differences in terms of the costumes there. So just researching, ordered lots of books. We shot in Atlanta, but I did part of my prep in LA and New York, and went to the various costume houses that LA has to offer. And one of the things that I came to find was that even though LA has lots of great resources, there hadn't been a lot of shows that had been done for this specific time period, which was kind of like a catch-22, because you want to pull as much as you can for like background actors, because most of the time, of course, in something like this, we want to, custom design pieces for our principal actors, but you do want to have a good stock of things for, for your background. And for our men, there were lots of options. For our women, not so much. So that was kind of like a catch-22, because we wanted to have things, but then it just opened up the door for me to just design more things, which was, fun. It's always a costume designer's dream whenever you get to like really build something from, the ground up, so to speak. And so, yeah, like that's what I did. So lots of research. And then once, I got back to Atlanta, my tailor shop opened, we hit the ground running with making things. One of the main things that we started off with was the female enslaved dresses, because in the book, they were in blue dresses. So of course, that's something that we wanted to keep for the series. And so it may sound like it's something that is a fairly simple thing to do, oh, it's just a blue dress, but it's not just a blue dress, The the colors really had to work with the production design, the set design and all the different, textures and colors and patterns and prints that were in the house and on the plantation, but then also trying to find a color that would work on our various, skin complexions that we had to work with. And so also during this time period, the plantation owners would give the enslaved fabric for them to make their clothes. And during this time, it wasn't, of course, the best fabric. It wasn't the most comfortable fabric, but being that we were shooting this series in Atlanta in the dead of summer, I wanted to try to find a fabric that would, dye well, age well, live well in the Atlanta temperatures, but then also something that would be comfortable for the cast and our background actors to be, since they had to be in these dresses day in, day out, in this hot, sweaty summer. So that was, I wouldn't say a bit of a challenge, but that did take, a lot of work. And so I did find the fabric from Siam Costumes, which is in Thailand. I probably ordered everything that they had because they sent me like 2 boxes of various samples from cotton, muslins, linens, silks, satins, because those were the fabrics in terms of silks and satins that I used to make Margaret's costumes. And so they had this fabulous indigo muslin fabric, but it was more of a softer texture. So I said, okay, well, maybe this can work. And it actually did. So I ordered everything that they had. And when we got it, then we did our own process and manipulations to it. And then we came out with this, fabulous color that we used for the dresses. And so we did a winter version. And then we also did a summer version. And the summer version, actually, that color is a little bit more of a teal blue, so it has a little bit more green tones in it, but it was actually kind of like a trial by error because we were really trying to recreate the initial color that we did for the winter dresses. And when you're dyeing things, it's kind of like trial by error. You add a little bit of this color, you take this color away. And when I showed Brandon, he said, oh my gosh, I love this color. Like, let's do this one. And so it was kind of like by mistake that it happened, but it turned out to be, a great surprise because that's what we ended up using for our summer dresses.
I'm going to interrupt this interview for 1 second. We want to thank PixelView, one of our sponsors. They're a streaming solution for filmmakers. PixelView lets you stream your work to remote clients for easy collaboration, and it works with both on-set teams and post-production teams. With built-in video chat, you can discuss and make changes in real time and stream directly from your editing software. Or you can use the hardware encoder to stream from DaVinci Resolve or the camera on set. See the promo code and the link in the video description below. Now, you designed over 200 authentic. How did you keep on top of that? And and then like find all this like I just picture that place in Thailand being like, oh, I'll just go in for another day, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, we have to send all this material to the US.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely those moments because, like I said, initially we bought all of the indigo dye that they did, and then they didn't have any more. And so they just had the actual natural fabric that, of course, we dyed, in-house in our shop. But how did I keep up with all of that? I mean, I had an amazing department, a crew of people that I work with. And so, like them keeping me on my toes. And I pride myself in being a creative, but I also have like the business side of it all. So, and everyone said, well, how do you keep all of this, in your head? And I'm just like, it amazes me sometimes, that I'm able to like, manage it all. But, I had a great ACD. I had a great, shopping team, a great tailor shop, Aja Dyer, my set crew was great. And so working together, just, making sure that nothing's falling through the cracks and just keeping each other, on our toes. And so with the scheduling, I mean, I had a really, really lengthy prep time. Like I started in January and then we didn't start shooting until April. So I had about a good 3.5 months of prep, which was definitely needed. So we were able to do a lot in the beginning. And then once we started shooting, of course, it was a lot more faster paced, episodic shoot anywhere from 7 to 10 days. But while we're shooting the 7 to 10 days, we're also prepping for the next episode. So there's lots of moving parts. But, we did a pretty good job of it.
Well, and so like you talked about the color and like how important the color was, and it's referenced in the book. So but you're also working with like the set decorators, with the cinematographer to make sure the colors work. So how did those relationships work? Like, how did you guys work as a team to make this come together?
Yes, so Jerry Fleming was our production designer, and he and I were in constant communication. You know, he had a lot of prep too, because we actually built the plantation, like the house and all the enslaved cabins and the cookhouse. Like there's this great area that was about 45 minutes from the studio that they built. And so he would share with me the ideas for everybody's room, you know, for the foyer, the parlor, Margaret's room, Rufus's room, which was really great because it just really helped me, you know, help to design the costumes and what colors would work, you know, for the character, but also work well, you know, within the realm of his design. And so even like when we're shooting on location, which we did, you know, part of Dana's house, and then also the nosy neighbors, their house, whatever changes they were making to the location that we secured, you know, just being in constant communication about all of those things. So that way, you know, my costume design really contrasted and complemented rather than, you know, bleed into, you know, the sets.
Now, I'm wondering because when I look at Dana's character, she seems she comes is very neutral, like historically neutral in terms of the time period. So, what was your approach for her to make her sort of blend in throughout history?
Well, I think you nailed it, historically neutral, because that was a term that Brandon coined because I didn't do the pilot. And we find in the pilot when she's first introduced that she just moved to LA from New York. And so because of the timeline of the modern day period, and once once the viewers see the full series, then the modern day period actually takes span of probably a day, like once she starts once she starts transporting back in time. It starts from like one night and then kind of finishes like early the next day. And so for this series, a lot of the series did take place in the period, but there were a couple of moments when we did go back into the modern. And so it seems like it's simple, you know, oh, she's just, you know, putting on clothes to go back, but we wanted to make sure that she didn't stand out too much. Initially, we were thinking, okay, yeah, she should stand out because she is kind of like a fish out of water, you know? So then we started doing fittings and saying, okay, well, no, maybe we should do this, maybe we should maybe we should do this. And then Brandon, like I said, coined the term historically neutral because he said, you know, no zippers, no shoelaces, no this, no that. You know, there were all these notes after doing various fittings trying to find, you know, the one look. And then he coined the term. And so even in the book, it's referenced that she's dressed like a man. And then in the series, one of the characters says that, you know, she's dressed like a man. So that doesn't mean that she's in men's clothing. It just means that she's in what a man would be in during that time period, which was pants, because women did not wear pants during that time period. So, you know, and button front shirts, even though the men's shirts during that day were more of a tunic style and kind of like half button, you know, we did put her in a full, you know, button front shirt because those were things that even though when she went back and people saw her, they knew that she wasn't from there, but they would be thinking that, okay, well, maybe she's from New York or she's from Philadelphia or some other area in the country where, you know, Black people were more free versus in Maryland during that time. So that's the reason for her costuming. And so it's also more so about survival, because when she's going back into the modern world, she never knows exactly when she's going to be pulled back, you know? So it's like she's just trying to hurry up. And then she had just moved, so she wasn't really fully unpacked yet. So there was still a little bit of room for her to, for us to not really show exactly who she is in the modern time period. It's more so thinking about what can I put on really fast because I never know when I'm going to be pulled back, but it needs to be something that is going to work for there because I can't stand out too much. You know, I have to be equipped because I never know what's going to happen from one moment to the next, especially going back. I may need to run. I may need to do this. I may need to protect myself. You know, so then you see also that she has this go bag that we work with the props department on as well. That she's putting all of these survival things that they don't have during that time period, but she has because, you know, she's she knows that there's things that are going to happen that she needs to be, equipped for. So her costume, was historically neutral, but it also was more so about survival.
Is there, now you've, like I said, you did 200 designs. Is there one that you're particularly proud of that
Oh my
people
goodness.
should keep an eye out for?
Oh my goodness, you're going to get me in trouble. Because I mean, everyone's clothes, everyone's costumes were just really amazing, and everyone loved them. Brandon loved them, the network loved them. They couldn't stop singing our praises. We even had Octavia Butler's estate handler come by during shooting, and she was just in awe of my costume shop and just like the set design and everything that we were doing. And so which one am I really the most proud of? Goodness. So in 103, in episode 103 and episode 107, I would say that those would probably be like my proudest moments. I can't pinpoint one costume. So I'll just say like those are probably like my two episodes where the costumes are just really memorable. 103 was our Christmas episode. And so the Whalens had a party in their house. And so there was a small group of people that were there, but then Tom's ex-wife, well, not Tom's ex-wife, his dead wife's sister and her husband, they came, and their costumes were really, really great. And then in 107, they go into town. Tom takes Kevin and the guys into town, and so we finally get to see more than just what's happening on the plantation and get a really get a feel for this environment. And so we had, oh my gosh, hundreds of background and men and women and horsemen and all kind of things going on. We had the barbershop men that I put kind of like in a uniform that I felt was really, really cool. So I would say those two episodes, I think probably have more of the costumes that stand out the most, for the series, but not to say like the other episodes don't, but I just feel like those two probably have the more memorable ones.
Because like when I try on clothes, or even like a hat is a great example, it's like, oh, my face doesn't match it or my body type doesn't match it. But if you're working on a historically specific time period, how do you work with the different body types to make sure that they still match that historical period, but look good in the clothes?
Right. So, of course, this time the clothes were what they were. We weren't trying to reinvent the wheel or recreate something that did not exist. Right. So, being that the men wore basically tailcoats and waistcoats, which are, we call them vests today. Their shirts, and then they either wore breeches, which are more like the tight fitted kind of capri pants that fit into like the boots. A little bit later on, they wore more like pantaloons that were what we call pants today, but more of a slimmer straight leg silhouette. So like the clothes are that for the men of that time period. So how do we bring Tom to life, from the book, in this particular kind of clothing? And so being that his character was, very mean and calculating and brooding, we kept him in, really dark colors, but also lots of texture, because he is also someone like Margaret that married into money, he married Hannah, and Hannah's family had money. So that's where he got his wealth from. He basically inherited that plantation. And so in the book, I think it describes more of his financial ups and downs, not so much in the series. We do span a period of 3 years between a couple of episodes where they do come into some more money. But even initially, you see that, that they're doing pretty well, okay. Like they're kind of like a middle class, plantation family, I guess, if you will. And so being that he came into money, he's still a little rough around the edges, as the viewers watch, they'll see that. And so using like the different various textures and colors and tones on him, in the darker color palette, I think just really helped to show, who he was. Then in terms of Margaret's costuming, we made everything for her. Everything that you see, her in, we made. And we did make a lot of things for Tom as well, but there were some really great pieces that I did pull from a couple of the costume houses that were in great condition that I said, okay, like I have to keep this for him. I don't want to put anybody else in this, because a lot of the stock is used for like our background and potentially like day players, not cast that we see all of the time. So basically everything for our principal cast was made. So with Margaret, all of her things being made. And then she too, is like this, crazy, mean, maniacal character as well. And of course, because of the time period, she mistreats the enslaved. And because we wanted to make her someone that the audience could identify with a little bit more, because at the end of the day, she is a mother, she loves Rufus to death. During the series, you'll find that she had 5 other kids that didn't make it. So Rufus is the one that, that made it. So of course, she's very overprotective. She loves him to death. And so because we wanted to kind of show that softer side of her, we did a juxtaposition between, her character and the clothes, the costumes that she wore, by keeping her in jewel tones and lighter colors and silhouettes, just kind of like soften her up a little bit. So that was, the elements behind designing Margaret's costumes. And then for Rufus, you see that he's kind of like a little Tom, but he can't help it. He's like a mischievous little boy, but, he's Tom's son. And because, he's his father's son, and because Margaret, she married into money, she wants to look and dress the part, and she wants people to like her, because she knows that Hannah has such a huge influence, on the plantation and the people in the community, that now that she's gone and she's kind of taken her place, that, she feels like she has something to prove. And we show that in her costumes, and we show that also in Rufus's costumes, because he's like her little baby doll. So she wants to make sure that he's always looking his best. And because he was a kid, we played on his red hair, and keeping him like in brighter tones and oranges and golds and reds and things like that, just to kind of brighten him up. Because even though he has a couple of times where he says and does things that are, you're like, whoa, but he's still a child and he's youthful and jovial. So that was, the element to his costuming.
Now, I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Oh my goodness. The Real Housewives.
It's fantastic. It's a great one.
Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah. There are a few, right? So Beverly Hills, Atlanta, and Salt Lake City. Those are my 3. I tried to watch the Dubai initially, but then I just kind of got sidetracked with work. But those would be my top 3 for the Real Housewives franchise. Yeah.
Do you listen to Bitch Sesh, the podcast about it?
No, I don't.
Oh my gosh. It's they're watching every single one. And it's 2 comedians, and it's just them like discussing everything, and it's become like a whole, like they do live shows now because it's so popular, and a couple of the women have come on and been guests, but it's ridiculous. It's a fun, silly podcast.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Well, thank you for having me, Gordon. This has been a pleasure. I truly enjoyed it, because I love talking about Kindred, and of course I love talking all things costume. So this has been great.
Yes, well, no, the pleasure's all mine. That's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out on filmmakeru.com, or of course on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Raquel. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.